Washington, D.C. has one of the most iconic Apple stores, and not just in the US, but I would say in the world. And today, we'll try to experience it. It's such a beautiful and bright and blue skies kind of day, as you can see. The sun is out and everything looks extra beautiful. And if you look at the building, the Apple Store building, you'll figure out that, of course, it's not a normal Apple Store. Of course, how can that be a normal Apple Store? This building actually used to be a big library in Washington, D.C. It was called, and is still called, the Carnegie Library. And a few years ago, Apple renovated the library and converted it into an Apple Store. Of course, no prizes for guessing why this is called the Carnegie Library. It was because in the early 1900s, Andrew Carnegie funded this building and built this majestic library for Washington, D.C. I think people who are curious about libraries in the US and possibly throughout the world would know that Andrew Carnegie was a massive figure in getting lots of libraries built throughout the world. In fact, it's believed that he funded more than 2,500 libraries throughout the world, and this was in the late 1800s to the early 1900s. And Andrew saw libraries as ladders upon which the aspiring may climb. Carnegie himself benefited from a library when he was growing up in the US as a Scottish immigrant, and he wanted to give that opportunity to millions of others. But of course, as we see, this isn't a library anymore, because the library moved a few blocks away in Washington, D.C., and this space was converted into an Apple Store. So imagine this, in the early 1900s, somebody would have been sitting right here, maybe looking out that same window and reading in the library, thanks to the money that Andrew Carnegie gave to fund this space. And today, that same old library has been renovated into this beautiful space with the money that Apple invested or Apple spent in renovating this library to its current form. They reportedly spent around $30 million to get it here. Love these grand windows and how much of the world outside you can still see while you're inside this building. You can look at the blue skies, you can look at the tree, you can look at the buildings outside as well. And for some reason, this grand architecture, more of the classical architecture, I think specifically this building is constructed in the Beaux-Arts architecture. I know that sounds like something very foreign. It's actually French. Beaux-Arts actually is written as Beaux Arts. And for the longest time, I thought that's how it's pronounced, Beaux Arts. But it's actually Beaux-Arts, the French Beaux-Arts. And I love the fact that this is in that classic old kind of architecture. Where the library moved after it was removed from this place, that particular building, not too far from here, is actually more of the modern architecture, and I don't really like it as much for some reason. It's time to climb up the stairs of this Beaux-Arts architecture building. And I still love how much light these grand windows let in. And while the library moved to the newer building, as I was mentioning earlier, which is more of the modern architecture, this building serves two purposes now. The first floor, which I think back in India and maybe other places is called the ground floor, that serves as the Apple store, but the second floor is having a different purpose. You see the more modern glass buildings just outside, but I don't think they match the old architecture at all. I just love how majestic and grand and expensive and almost regal this building looks. And on the first floor or the second floor, I keep getting confused, we have something that's called the DC History Center. Beautiful. Just love walking in this nice bright sun, the Washington DC sun. Wow, and love those stairs. Love the Beaux-Arts architecture. And the confusion that I was referencing earlier is that back in India, the floor that you enter at is called the ground floor and the one above is called the first floor. Andrew Carnegie, the person who funded this library. But yeah, coming back to the floors, India, it's ground floor, first floor, etc., etc. Whereas in the US, you start at the first floor and then you've got the second floor. So yeah, because I keep doing back and forth, I keep getting confused between the two. Of course, you see Andrew Carnegie, the big donor right there. This is the original skylight right at the center of the Carnegie Library, and we can see how beautifully restored it is thanks to Apple. And of course, if you cannot realize, I'll make it explicit. Early 1900s, there was very limited electricity, and therefore natural light was extremely important. What was also very little in the early 1900s was flying, and Amelia Earhart, who's right at the center of this picture, was also at the center of the aviation world at that time. Or at least people realized later on that she was one of the central figures of aviation at that time. There she is, one of the pioneers of aviation. Amelia crossed the Atlantic, the first woman to do so solo, and while she was flying over Pacific, she went missing, never to be found again. That picture of Amelia and all those other people after her landing in Washington DC was taken with the Cirkut Camera 10. This was one of the first cameras that clicked a panoramic picture. It would move almost in an arc, and that's how it would capture these huge frames. Of course, this space within the building is the DC History Center. I had a really nice afternoon at the Carnegie Library. Now it's time to walk back a few blocks and get back home. I also found this at the DC History Center. DC, of course, like a lot of capital cities, is trying to have more self-government and less of federal government. But of course, as of now, it's not a state, though it wants to be one. There are so many things I want to be as well. I think there are so many things we all want to be, so many things Amelia Earhart wanted to be and ended up becoming. It's amazing to think that she's still missing somewhere in the Pacific. I'm still trying to make myself like, or maybe love, this city. There are times when it almost feels unreal, the way the city's laid out, so different from the one in which I grew up. I think it's a decent city, and it's got free museums. Of course, it's also the seat of power, the city that runs the US and has a huge impact in the world.